And welcome to Conservative Arkansas Media. My name is Paul Harrell. So, a lot has been going on in the last week. Last week on the broadcast, we got to interview State Representative Keith Brooks. He is the House sponsor of the LEARNS Act, which is Governor Sarah Sanders. One of her chief legislative goals this session is to overhaul Arkansas's broken education system. And if you're one of these people out there who are throwing a temper tantrum because you don't think Arkansas's education system is broken, or maybe you think it's broken, you just don't like a Republican idea, a conservative idea, offering people more choice, you know what? I don't know what to tell you. You should win elections. That's one of the things I guess I could say is this has been coming for a very, very long time, and nobody has really had the stomach to do what Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders is attempting to do. And I know she's probably getting a lot of grief for it from leftists. Obviously, I see social media, and I told you that this was going to happen. Superintendents do not want the educational industrial complex in Arkansas to change. It is a sacred cow. They think things are working just fine. So what they have done is they've told their school districts, they've told their principals, which tells their teachers and the teachers' lounge how bad this is. And everybody, and it's fascinating because there really is, propaganda. And this has been going on in Little Rock for a very long time. It's not just with education, but education is a perfect example. The regulators or the government itself for years, meaning the agency, the State Department of Education for years has resisted any changes to the educational system here in Arkansas. Now we finally have it. We have vouchers. We have savings accounts where the money is going to follow the child. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute in a little bit more detail. But we had State Representative Keith Brooks on the program last week. It's a great interview where we go over some of the high points of this plan. And yes, it is a lengthy piece of legislation, but they've been working on it for a very, very long time. Last night, so it's passed the Senate. Last night, it debuted, I think, for the second or third time in the House Committee on Education. They met in the morning. And then they met in the afternoon after the House session adjourned, and it went from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 9:15 at night. Let me say that again. The House Education Committee, in an effort of transparency and letting the public comment, they met last night from 3 o'clock until 9:15, till after 9 o'clock, allowing everybody who had traveled to Little Rock to have their say, allowing the teachers who don't, like these ideas, and a lot of teachers and a lot of educators who love the LEARNS Act, who are excited that Governor Sanders is actually doing something about the problems that we face. And so it was a very lengthy process. It was exhausting. A lot of similar talking points were coming from the leftists in there, and I do call them. I'm sorry. I call them leftists. I'm not saying that there's not anybody who, out there who votes Republican that may not like the bill, but for the most part, like I said, we're seeing these entrenched interests that have had, that have been resistant. They've been allergic to change in our education system for a very, very long time. So I watched the debates. I watched back and forth, last night. This one stuck out to me. Somebody who's against the LEARNS Act. Let's take a listen, shall we?
I'm not saying that lightly, by the way. I literally would not be alive today if it wasn't for my English teacher, Miss Porter, and my algebra teacher, Miss Elders, because I am a gay man.
Really?
And growing up gay in this state is terrifying, especially when you are young. And I would have made some very, very finite and final decisions if it wasn't for educators, public educators. Indoctrination seems to be a phrase that's catching a lot of fire, and I am concerned about that being in this bill because I don't necessarily understand what you mean by indoctrination. It was very eloquently put a while ago. If you have a student who is identified as who is gay and they're in a religious school, are they not being indoctrinated to believe that they're going to go to hell and die, or when they die?
What is indoctrination? This is great. Critical race theory is indoctrination. Critical race theory is has nothing to do with math, has nothing to do with reading, has nothing to do with arithmetic. Okay, so that's what it means. We're going to stop with the political agenda. Now, I will entertain the idea that neutrality is actually a myth. I was talking about this with as I was doing another interview. I was talking about this, as a matter of fact, the other day. Neutrality is a myth. You're going to teach the kids something. You're going to indoctrinate them with something, right? I mean, it starts at a very young age. I mean, it can be little things, too, like 2 plus 2 equals 4. Why is 2 plus 2 4? Well, when you're really, really young, 2 plus 2 is 4 because the teacher says it is. Now, we're abandoning this idea. Hopefully the LEARNS Act will try to fix this. It's a whole different philosophy, right? Now it's like, we know you need to understand why 2 plus 2 equals 4. Not at first you don't. Not at first you don't. Anyway, there's all kinds of, different ways to indoctrinate kids. But I can promise you this, leftists would be throwing an absolute fit. The point's not lost. You think leftists, rainbow, Gestapo leftists would send their kids to Christian schools? No, they wouldn't, right? And yet, in public education, we have this myth of neutrality that Christians don't enjoy, by the way, but somehow atheists enjoy this idea that they don't have a worldview that's being forced on other people. You also have a situation where the LGBT crowd, the enclave there, they get this secular neutrality assigned to them, that they're not pushing anything. And the same with critical race theory. Like, it's somehow an objective fact that if you're born white, you are a racist, which is what's being pushed with critical race theory. So yeah, it's really simple. It's all self-evident. To the left is, this indoctrination, I'm not really sure. This is a disturbing part. Anyway, let's continue with this clip.
That not literally the definition of indoctrination. What are the parts of this bill that I do like? I do like the fact that we're going to be paying freshman teachers a livable wage. However, if you look, you've squished the school district up for those employees that are entering, and you've cut off the top. I know that there's language within this legislation.
I'm going to address that here in just a minute, but it's not. I want to just real quick. I want to address indoctrination, and if you look at what's been going on in Florida, if we see the bills that have been passed in Florida, it's signed by Governor DeSantis down there. One of them specifically was, we're not going to talk about sex with kids in school. And the LGBT lobby, right, the LGBT lobby threw a fit about this, saying, how dare you, right? So I would just say, he says he's a gay man. This is also a problem that, and I'm not sure about him specifically, but people who are of that persuasion, when it comes to indoctrination, it's not just CRT. It's a very interesting, it's a very important point. It's not just CRT. We're also talking about indoctrinating kids with this sexual identity, nonsense. At a young age, sexualizing kids, and this issue is being talked about across the spectrum here at the Arkansas General Assembly. We've talked about, as a matter of fact, coming up, we're going to be talking with the State Representative Justin Gonzales. He is the House sponsor of the library bill. We've talked to Senator Sullivan about that. He's the Senate sponsor. We want to reach out to the House sponsor. So we've got Justin Gonzales coming up next to talk about SB 81, which brings librarians and libraries under existing obscenity laws, and also provides a path for parents to challenge books in a school library or in a county library that are obscene and absolutely filled with sexual filth. So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But the education industrial complex is strong in Arkansas, and you need to be praying for the Arkansas legislature. You need to be praying for Governor Sarah Sanders, because there's all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork, interests, things that are going on behind the scenes. And I don't have any specific intel on this. I just know how this state is. And so pray for Governor Sanders to be strong. Pray for the legislature to be strong, because this is going to have ramifications. A lot of this stuff is we have these little vestiges in our institutions that haven't been made conservative yet. Don't really know what time it is in the state of Arkansas. Our government has our House, the Senate. I mean, the governor's mansion is now got a conservative in the office. All of this stuff has happened, but we still have these little enclaves. People got to remember, the bureaucracy in Arkansas is the bureaucracy that taught, instructed, and birthed Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, arguably the most powerful political family in the world, and that's actually a bane, a stain on us as a state. So you have to understand that if you're going to make real change in Arkansas, people are going to fight you on it, and people are going to fight Governor Sanders on this. And so we have to, support these legislators, have to support the governor in trying to make real change in Arkansas's broken education system. And it's going to happen. I talk about a lot of times, and this goes with. This goes with sometimes in communities, whether it's chamber, maybe the Chamber of Commerce wants to challenge somebody and back another candidate, primary them, and this happens in really every 2 years. You have elites, if you will, and I know teachers aren't necessarily thought of as elites, but certainly these giant school systems are, very elitist in their mentalities and everything else. And so you essentially have the silent majority, and you have people kind of coping with this idea that they work and they serve among a community where the majority of people disagree with their worldview. And I think that's kind of what's happening here when it comes to this big uproar over actual good conservative reforms in education. People are running around claiming that the sky is falling, and it's a little bit silly, if you want my honest opinion about it. So, does anybody? I want to transition here for a minute. No pun intended. Hang on one second. Let me get this off the screen here. So, I want to transition here for just a minute. We've been doing conservative Arkansas media here for, several weeks, and I have not mentioned John Brummett's name not one time. He, in a lot of terms, because the state is actually not only Republican, but is actually becoming conservative and more conservative by the day. John Brummett, who is the columnist at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette opinion column, is, in a lot of ways becoming more and more irrelevant. Just as the state leaves him behind, leaves his Democrat ideology behind. He claims to be, a moderate, but, he's a leftist Democrat, and his influence is waning. But this article of his really stuck out to me, and I want to share it with you. It was the other day I read this, or actually this morning. John Brummett, Time for a Frank Discussion, and he's specifically talking about the transgender issue here. And he says that, this article is going to make both sides uncomfortable and everything else. But I find, once again, his logic just so cynical and exploitive. It talks about Matt McKee. We remember Matt McKee, and we remember he made news. Senator McKee, he asked he asked a man who dressed as a woman if he, what genitalia he had. And it was it was a mic drop moment for sure, because it really exposed the elephant in the room about this whole transgender situation and everything else. So this is what John Brummett is talking about, that it's time for a frank discussion. He mentions the Associated Press ran the article the other day, I'm quoting, originating in Little Rock on the subject of transgender persons facing hostilities in state legislatures. I would say that transgender LGBT enclaves are they're facing legislation in red Christian states trying to stop what many of the population who votes believes is a quick lurch toward evil. And it is black and white for conservative voters. And that's what is just lost on a lot of these Democrats. And maybe because they sincerely believe they're right, but you can be sincere in your beliefs and still be black and white, dead wrong in your beliefs. So the hook came from Little Rock, not surprisingly. It was a story about a transgender pharmacist in the Capitol who was testifying to the Arkansas Senate Committee on the hormone therapy for children and got asked by a state senator if she had a male genitalia. She said the question was horrible. It made a big deal. I'm going to skip down here. So John Brummett writes, I agreed the other day with a moderate Democrat lawyer who said that state legislative Democrats make a mistake rising up time and time again with passionate defenses of transgender persons facing attacks from Republican legislators. They accomplish nothing, he said, other than getting portrayed in the media in a way that deepens Democrats' cultural alienation from Arkansas voters, thus their ability to grow back their own party. Do you realize what's being said here? What's being said here is, from a political strategy standpoint, some Democrats believe that Democrat lawmakers should keep their mouths shut and quit standing up for LGBT rights because it's further alien. Literally, abandon your principles, throw the LGBT enclave under the bus because you're not doing anything to help the Democrat Party. You're not doing anything to restore the Democrat Party. Because the Republicans are crushing it on social issues, because that is the main focus of Arkansas right now, because we're on this slippery slope. We see how morally depraved, and it's getting worse and worse and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. Now, Brummett makes clear, look, it's not about being right against wrong, which Democrats are. So Democrats are right to stand up against this, but they're just not being smart by it. So I guess, what Brummett is calling for here is really, some sort of political triage where you just say, look, we got to pick our battles here. We got to win. We got to abandon. We're not going to beat them at this cultural war. And he even says that these culture wars being banded by Republicans in Arkansas amount to offering bait to Democrats who are either doing the right thing and rising up passionately in defense of the oppressed, or the dumb thing and taking the bait, or both, the former amounting to the latter. You should never concede to oppressive legislation. Otherwise, there's no point in holding office. But going to the passionate mat every time defines you culturally and is detrimental. I can see why this article would be offensive to Democrats, for sure. I can. But listen to this. So this is the quote from Senator Matt McKee about his statement. This is the quote from Matt McKee about his question to the transgender pharmacist. As a father of 4 daughters, I will do everything in my power to protect my children and the children of Arkansas, especially from the woke mob who intend to push their agenda and beliefs down our throats and destroy our families. So Brummett disputes this and, doesn't really believe there's a woke mob in Arkansas. And again, it's really tone deaf, and it's why Democrats are, completely losing what little credibility they had left. But listen to this end here, and I'm gonna tell you why this is relevant. Why can't Democrats make vivid some other defining issue or issues of their choosing? And why can't the people see that there are no frightful mobs in Arkansas unless you count the Republican Legislative Caucus? Now, this is absolutely ridiculous. But as an example, Democrats can't stop taking the bait. They really can't. If we're going to, for the sake of argument, just accept this, that it's not we're trying to save kids, which we are. It's, well, we're baiting the Democrats into further, political into the political dustbin of history. There is a bill that passed out of the Senate State Agencies Committee on Tuesday, okay? A bill that passed out of the Senate State Agencies Committee on Tuesday by Senator Kim Hammer to put an abortion monument on the Capitol grounds to commemorate the murder, the deaths of 250,000 Arkansan babies before they were born during this genocidal period known as Roe versus Wade. During this time from 73 to, when the Dobbs decision overturned Roe versus Wade. Last year, by the way, in June, which was supposed to be the month for the LGBT, and ended up being a month we're going to celebrate the protection of the unborn for as long as we possibly can. For as long as this country's around, we're going to continue to celebrate what happened. It'll be a year this June, so get ready. I mean, I don't know. I guess we should fire up barbecue pits. We should throw a party every year. Throw a party in June, celebrate the fact that the states were given the rights, that abortion is made illegal here in Arkansas, abortion is made illegal in these other because of Donald Trump's Supreme Court justice picks. And we should it at some point should be a national holiday. But the point is not lost here. We do need to remember what we did, what was allowed, and be confronted with it. Almost as if, and I know this may sound crass, but almost as if rubbing a dog's nose in their own vomit, because it's disgusting what was allowed to happen for 40 years in this country, and it was a genocide. Now, Senator Kim Hammer had this to say on Tuesday of this week, and in keeping with John Brummett's, they just can't quit taking the bait. Ivy League Democrat lawyer Senator Clark Tucker couldn't stand it and had to poke the bear. He had to ask, why do we need a monument for the unborn? That's just going to make women who made abortions or who had abortions uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe death should make us uncomfortable. Listen to this.
Long and short of it is 307 creates the legislation that would allow for a monument to be placed on Capitol grounds in memory of those babies unborn during the Roe versus Wade era, be a recognition of those babies. That's the long and short of it, and I'll be glad to take any questions.
That's Senator Kim Hammer.
Is there any questions? All right, Senator Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, I just have to,
I just have to. I just have to ask. This bill, by the way, passed out of the Senate committee with a voice vote. One dissenting vote was Democrat Senator Ivy League Clark Tucker.
I don't want to litigate abortion. That's not the purpose of the bill. But I do think we can all hopefully agree that if a person chooses to get an abortion, they may have different reasons, but by and large, it's a very intensely personal decision. And every abortion that took place in Arkansas during the time period identified in the bill, that was a choice that person made to have an abortion. Now, some women who made that decision may regret it, and for that reason or another reason may appreciate having a monument on the state capitol. I'm not saying it's universal, but I would have to believe that there are scores of women out there who felt like they had to make a decision either for their own health or for whatever reason it might be, and for there to be a public monument, which is a visual reminder, it would just be adding pain to their process. And so I guess I wanted to voice that concern and invite you to respond. This is unlike for example, we consistently have memorials for first responders or military. And in those cases, we all celebrate, memorialize the men and women who lost their lives in service to this country. This is a different situation than that.
Yes, it is a different situation because we didn't participate and make legal the mass murder of first responders, police officers, and firefighters. So it is a very different situation. No, this would be a monument, and this is the truth. This would be a monument recognizing a genocide. That's what this would be. It would be a monument recognizing a genocide. As a matter of fact, the bill, let's see if I can pull up the bill here for all of us. It's SB 307. I think I have it right here. Yeah, here it is. I'm going to throw this up on the screen for you guys, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll come back to that here in just a minute. This bill reads really good because just listen to this. As the United States Supreme Court explained in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, let's see here. In his lectures on law in 1790, James Wilson, who signed the Declaration of Independence and was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, explained, with consistency, beautiful and undeviating human life from its commencement to its close is protected by the common law. In the contemplation of law, life begins when the infant is first able to stir in the womb. By the law, life is protected not only from actual destruction, but from every degree of violence, and in some cases from every degree of danger. Again, that's the works of James Wilson. And to be clear, the Supreme Court totally neutered a national discussion that was going on in the 1970s and took away our right to govern ourselves, creating out of thin air a right to murder your children. That is no longer the law of the land. But in doing so, what did we do in Arkansas? Well, we tried to pass laws that never could stand up to court challenges. We continued to pass laws trying to make it harder. I mean, we did make some progress. We obviously passed a trigger law that, when Roe was overturned, meant that our abortion laws went back to the way they were before Roe versus Wade. Are we just going to ignore what happened? Are we going to ignore the elephant in the room, which is what was allowed to happen? A great evil was allowed to happen in the state of Arkansas. Here in a minute, he'll say it, 250,000 children. That's we need to be confronted with that. Even all of us conservatives that know it's wrong. Democrats need to be confronted with it as well, and hopefully they'll see the light and realize what was done. But we need to be confronted with it as well. And we never need, you hear the monuments, never forget. Yes, never forget what was allowed to happen. Back to this clip.
So for that reason, I don't think it's appropriate for a memorial, because of all of the conflicting emotions that everyone who has had an abortion during the time period must have around that decision. So,
Sure. And
we don't want to make anyone feel bad about their abortion. Plenty of women do, by the way. Plenty of women who have abortions are very remorseful, especially if they go on to have children and actually allow them to be born.
I want to be respectful that there are women who have made decisions probably from all perspectives of the situation. Some found themselves in an unfortunate situation. I mean, we could run the gamut. But also at the same time, the one thing I would want to express is, and that's why we have purposely written the bill that we did, I want the monument to be tasteful, respectful, honoring of the babies that were not privileged to see life on earth, although I believe life begins at conception. And I would want it to be sensitive to the fact that if somebody walks by that monument, it respects the multitude of emotions that are represented in that monument. But at the same token, we do have monuments on the Capitol grounds that celebrate life, as in the Little Rock Nine, that recognize lives that were given in the line of duty, both military and as public servants. We have monuments for a wide range of things on the Capitol ground. I think it's important to our history that we have visual reminders of a painful chapter in our state's history, magnitude by the fact that, and it's without looking at it exactly, 250,000 plus babies that lost their lives to abortion. And I think that the number alone is significant enough that it deserves recognition, and we deserve to be reminded of it. I want a monument, and it is, safeguarded in here. I want a monument that is going to be tastefully done, and that if a woman does walk by it and does see it, that there's a degree of comfort and consolation that we have remembered a painful part of our history. History I hope we never repeat, but sometimes we need visual reminders so that we don't repeat history again.
That is exactly the truth. We need visual reminders. I mean, think of it as it's like the opposite of an Ebenezer in a way. Or it could be an actual Ebenezer, because the end of Roe was certainly a deliverance of sort. Now, we have a lot more work to do to stop abortion nationwide in this country. The work is not done. This is a great bill. This is a great use because we don't ever need to repeat it. And we need to constantly mourn what was allowed to happen in this country, what was allowed to happen in this state. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being with us. We've got a great show for you. Coming up, we're going to be talking with State Representative Justin Gonzales. Justin Gonzales is the House sponsor of a bill that would protect our kids by bringing librarians and libraries under existing obscenity laws, ending these horrible sexual books that are being peddled to our kids in the name of some sort of perverse idea of the First Amendment. We'll talk more about that when we return. This is Conservative Arkansas Media. Don't go anywhere. All right, and welcome back to Conservative Arkansas Media. I'm Paul Harrell. So we're going to take a break from talking about education, which is a big deal, obviously, right now at the Capitol in Little Rock. And we're gonna take a break from talking about the abortion monument that passed out of a Senate committee, and that's Senator Kim Hammer's bill. I want to go back to what we talked about last week and several weeks ago, and that's SB 81. This is a bill that would bring libraries under obscenity laws. We've talked to Senator Dan Sullivan about this. He's the Senate sponsor of the bill, but I wanted to reach out to the lead House sponsor on this, and that's State Representative Justin Gonzales, and he joins us now. Mr. State Representative, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so first of all, thank you. I just want to thank you for sponsoring this bill. I know you're, probably getting all kinds of pushback from the LGBT enclave, but at the same time, this is a real problem, and so conservatives are relieved that, you guys at the legislature are trying to address the problem of, the left coming after our kids, basically. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you just said. It's the left coming after kids. I have gotten pushback from some librarians, even some just recently English teachers worried about what it's going to do with the classics that they teach, and it doesn't touch that. This is about providing obscene materials to kids and protecting kids from that. Right now, obviously, librarians are exempt from that obscenity law, and this is fixing that problem.
Yeah, and it's also, it also sets up a process by which parents can complain. It goes through and this is also school libraries as well. I thought that was a really good addition to the bill. So not only are you bringing, libraries and librarians under existing obscenity laws, so, you could be criminally liable. If I handed out some of these books, Justin, if I handed out some of these books on the street to a kid, I could go to jail, but not with librarians. But then you have this situation where if a parent at a school library or a public library sees a book that they're not getting rid of, there's a process that you can go through a process, and it ends up in the hands of either the school board, which is elected, or the county quorum court, which is also elected. And that's a really big deal, that it's going to end up with elected officials, so the people will actually be represented, or at least that's the hope.
No, that's exactly right. It's just if these librarians decide that they don't want to remove those books from the kids section, and they want to make them available to kids, sets up a process that they have to publicly say why. The boards have to review the books, so they know what they're talking about. They know what's in these things, and then publicly say why they think that should be available to kids. Because some of these just absolutely should not be available to kids. Um, and that's not really just my opinion. I mean, it's in the obscenity laws that most people, like you said, can't provide this material to kids, but somehow librarians have been exempt from that. Um, it's funny. There was another state representative that was showing me some pictures of they've made copies of a book, or somebody had made copies of pages of some of these books, and this representative was showing them to me in the House chamber, and kind of like secretively saying, hey, look at this. This is what's in some of these kids' books, and these books were written for kids 9 years old and up, and they were so bad that we didn't want anybody to see what was on the pages.
Yeah.
It was basically pornography for kids.
And yeah, and it's the sexualization of kids. The word you're not supposed to use is grooming, but that's exactly what's going on. I think I know the packet you're talking about. I haven't seen it, but there was a packet that was referenced in the Senate committee last week by a woman from Northwest Arkansas named Gloria Martin, who gave a testimony. And in the previous show last week, I had to give a disclaimer. The Democrats are saying, well, you're taking these excerpts out of context. And yet I had to give a disclaimer on the show. I said, hey, I played the tape. I said, this woman is about to read for you like quotes of, sexual acts and all kinds of stuff. So if you got kids in the room, it's like there's no context where a child should be hearing the phrases and terms and the acts described. And so, yeah, I mean, it made me blush. I mean, just to hear this in a public setting, I am sure it did the same thing for the legislators, the legislators there. What can you tell us about where this bill is? It passed the Senate committee, passed the full Senate. It's now at the House. It's going to be in the House. It's in the House Judiciary Committee. So, when is this bill going to be heard, and what do you expect to happen?
So it got put on special order of business for next Tuesday. I spoke with the chair of Judiciary this week, and she put it on special order for Tuesday, and has allocated an hour for hearing it so far. I'm gonna be surprised if we get through with that in an hour unless they limit debate. But
yeah, well, they limited.
Right now, that's planned here Tuesday.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying. Right now, that's a plan to hear it Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, in the Senate committee, they limited debate to 1 minute, which actually I think kind of served it well because people had to get right to the point. Unlike what happened, let's see, what is today? Wednesday. Unlike what happened last night in the in the Senate, the House Education Committee, which went till 9 o'clock. I think they started at 2 in the afternoon and they went to 9 at night. But of course, I know that's a much more sensitive issue. I mean, because here's the deal: I've never seen drag queens at the Capitol until this session. Now, maybe it has happened, but I haven't seen that until this session. And so, had you gotten any hate mail over this from the radical left?
No, I wouldn't say hate mail. I mean, I guess it depends on how you describe hate mail. Nothing threatening or anything like that. So.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. We'll see. I mean, the testimony, the hearing is sure to be one where there's opposition from the left, and they want to continue these books. And I've been talking about for a while now, State Representative Gonzales, that it is such a big deal, and this is not just in Arkansas, but this is in Christian red states all across the country. We're now having the same debates. We're passing the same type of laws trying to protect kids. And it really is encouraging that you guys are taking your responsibility seriously in terms of what is the function of government and in protecting our children is back in style. And it's a responsibility. I mean, if you guys were to see whether it's the kids coming to drag shows or whether it's the taxpayer-funded smut being peddled to our kids in the name of a perverted understanding of the First Amendment or freedom of speech. You guys are really stepping up and representing your constituents and protecting our kids. And so I really commend you for this, and I thank you for it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's exciting times in Arkansas with the new administration, whole new attitude at the Capitol about addressing these things, and it's time we do it. We only have a chance to do this every 2 years, and it seems like the left is coming up with these things so fast that we can't even stay on top of them. I had a pastor friend of mine ask me one day, he's like, why can't you do this to address these problems? Why are these things coming up? Because they're creating evil faster than what we can imagine. We can't address these things that fast. We can't even dream up the things that they're putting out there. I mean, who would have thought that a book like that would be available for 9-year-olds? I don't even want to mention the names of the book because I don't really want people going out there and looking these things up. But if you want to search them out, they're out there, and I think most people will be shocked about what's out there available to kids, being written for kids.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and I like how you put that. They're coming up with evil things that we can't even imagine. Yeah, I mean, so if things continue and society continues down this slippery slope of depravity, 2 years from now, there's going to be a whole nother list of problems that we have to address. So it's important that we get these done. And again, it's happening all over the country. We're now having these debates, and I think it's great. I mean, this was also true during COVID, but I guess kind of the last vestiges of our republic that are still thriving are the fact that we live in different states, and those states can pass different laws to address issues that are important to the people. Aside from the corrupt federal government, obviously we know what they would want. They want depravity. They want the evil to essentially flourish. They condone it, whether they condone it with their words or they condone it with their deafening silence about what's going on. But the state legislatures are closer to the people, and we're seeing the fruits of that. Again, I'm encouraged, and like you said, with the new administration, it really does feel like we're finally conservative. Truly, we've always been conservative. I mean, we've been that way for a while, but it seems like we're finally. I mean, when Sarah Huckabee Sanders says, the difference is between normal and crazy, that's what we all think, and she's saying what we all think. It's so encouraging.
That's exactly right.
Well, we appreciate it. State Representative Justin Gonzales, keep up the good work. And if you ever want to come back on, you got anything you need to say, you have our number, and really appreciate you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Conservative Arkansas Media will continue in just a moment. Okay, welcome back to Conservative Arkansas Media. So to recap, we had a great interview, by the way, with State Representative Justin Gonzales. Really want to thank him once again for coming on the program. And that abortion monument bill has just, the more and more I think about it, the more it needs to happen to remind us that we can never let a genocide like happened in Arkansas or the country ever happen again. But then we have to, we're going to end where we started. We started with education. That's where we're going to end today. So education, the debate continues to swirl. We're going to continue to monitor it. We're going to bring you all the information that we possibly can. I want to remind you to pray for the Arkansas legislature as they're trying to do the tough work of getting people to accept change. This legislation is going to go through, but it's, in my opinion, but there's a lot of people that are going to continue throwing a temper tantrum over it, who fundamentally just don't think that the Arkansas education system is broken. But there's a lot of good things. But I found this on Facebook. Somebody addressing some of the concerns over the bill, and really doing a great job articulating why it needs to, why really it doesn't seem genuine. Some of the objections to this bill don't really bring to mind that this is about the students. This is about the students and getting better outcomes. Here we go. So this is a long post on Facebook. Somebody named Courtney. I've listened and taken notes during the Senate Education and House Education meetings while senators and representatives ask questions That's about 5 hours of questions total. I'm no expert, but I feel I have done what I could to understand the facts of this education reform, not just listening to one side or the other spouting off half-truths and fear tactics. I am not a teacher, so I didn't do it for myself, but because I know it's a concern of many teachers that I know and care about. We have liked and even loved every teacher who has taught our kids the last 10 years in public school. However, I am pro-truth and transparency. If someone is telling you this will defund your district or that you'll never get another raise, then I would question what motivation, I would question what their motivation is. That is not factual. If your only concern with this education bill is the school choice part, then I would question why you don't believe every single kid deserves to go to a school that they will thrive in and not just the one they are zoned for, regardless if their parent can afford it or not. Rich people already send their kids to private schools if they choose, so saying that school choice is for rich people is ridiculous. Please stop. If you think your district will lose so many students due to school choice, you don't seem to have faith in your district. If your district loses a large amount of its enrollment, then what is your district doing wrong and what are they doing to fix it? That's the real question. Then on the salary schedule, the LEARNS Act requires each district to set their salary schedule, but the state still funds it just like it always has. And it will be up to your superintendent and your school board to give your raise with the money that they are given for teacher salaries. If you can't trust your district to do that, that's another issue altogether. If your district claims they can't afford raises, then they should look at what they budget for. If your superintendent's salary continually goes up, but teacher salary remains the same, that's a superintendent school board issue. And I hope you show up to the board meetings to question that. Districts still receive all previous funding plus LEARNS Act funding. No funding is cut, and the district's other funding is done the way it was done before. Third grade retention. This is my favorite part. They aren't going to hold back every third grade student. They will start testing kids in the first grade, and if they are on track, and if not, they have high-impact intervention and summer intervention to help get them to grade level. All of this before retaining a child. There are also many exemptions already, retain learning disabilities and something like that. But actually, this is the part of the bill. Do you realize that this bill is going to hold people back in the third grade if they're not proficient at reading? I mean, there's a provision for that. I thought that used to, I think I was in the fourth or fifth grade when I realized that they didn't really hold anybody back anymore. I thought you could, there was always a danger, right? There was always like, oh, if you don't do well in school, you're going to get held back. Why don't people want to hold back kids if they haven't done if they haven't gotten and retained and are able to apply the information, specifically reading? Didn't that used to happen where you got held back? And it's been because it's, where we diminish any idea of a meritocracy. But it certainly used to be a thing. So, really the modernization of education in this country has, the way we used to do education, clearly with the results. I mean, you look at and everybody wants to talk about the baby boomers in a disparaging way, but man, they got an incredible education. Now, a lot of this is because of moral degradation, and schools are now trying to raise children instead of educate them. We've got to get rid of raising kids at school. That is not the government's responsibility, and instead we just got to teach them to read, write, and do math. Anyway, that's all the time that we have for today. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I want to remind you that if you're on Facebook and you have problems with Facebook in any way, you can go to YouTube and get Conservative Arkansas Media. You can get CAM Media on YouTube. A lot of people prefer that instead of Facebook, but right now we're happy doing both. My name is Paul Harrell. Feel free to watch previous episodes. We've interviewed the chair of the House Education Committee, and all this is up at Facebook and YouTube. State Representative Brian Evans has been on the show. Last week, the House sponsor of the LEARNS Act, Keith Brooks, was on the show. So you want to check those out if you want even more information about this educational LEARNS Act debate that is going on in the state of Arkansas. My name is Paul Harrell. Thanks so much. You guys, we'll see you next week.